Welcome to the Waiver Wire Show. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. I'm joined once again by my partner in crime, Kevin Phillip Fox. Was in upstate New York watching the Bills beat up on the Giants last week. Worth the trip, Kevin. I know it was a W, but it's good to have you back, man.
So worth the trip, man. So happy to be back. I did smash a table. It was awesome. My tailbone is still sore.
You can't go to the Bills Mafia game without breaking a table. That's like, the entry fee, correct?
Yeah, it's actually a rite of passage. So happy to be back. So ready to talk through the waiver wire with you, Brian. We got a pretty complicated week. A lot of names this week. This is not one of those we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for names. This is one of those weeks that can be the difference between winning your championship and getting fourth place.
For various reasons, there's some juicy names, as you mentioned, Kev. Whether it's injuries or people coming back from injuries or people finally breaking out, coming off buys, all sorts of reasons. But let's not beat around the bush. Let's go ahead and jump into the Week 8 waiver wire pickups today. And bam, there we go.
Bam.
Hitting a bunch of buttons. Finally got it to work up.
Shout out to Armand for being here. We love you, Armand.
Always nice to see Armand, the OG, in the chat. So here is our list for the week, our top 10. We're going to go through this. Kevin, you have a different list, or at least a different order of a list. So I'm going to go down 1 through 10. You let me know your thoughts. Give me your number 1, so on and so forth.
Definitely.
Are you ready to get started?
Yes, sir. I'm so ready, dude.
So this is a fun name right off the bat at number 1. How about Mr. Kyler Murray, quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals? Has been on injured reserve, tore his ACL late last season. They just opened his window, and he is practicing. Now, that does not mean they have completely made him active. It just means they get a 21-day window where they get him to practice, see if he's ready to go. But Kyler Murray, I mean, obviously he hasn't produced any this year or even to finish off last year. But this is a Cardinals team that has been surprisingly frisky, especially on the offensive side of the ball, with Josh Dobbs leading them. Yeah. All things we speculated, are the Cardinals going to just not play Kyler at all? There's a huge guaranteed money that kicks in if he gets injured with the injury clause. But no, all signs are that they will plan on playing him when he is ready. And the fact that he's practicing, Kev, I mean, you get a guy like Kyler Murray, possible to add on waivers. You got to add him at number 1, right?
It's so huge, man. And I love the pick at number 1. I slid him down my list due to the depth at the position of quarterback, this specific stretch of games. There's a lot of streamers. There's a lot of names out there right now that I'm pretty fond of. So he's at my number 3 spot, but I have no issue with him being your number 1. I think he could have league winning upside. Dobbs has been, I love the term frisky to describe these Cardinals. Dobbs has absolutely been frisky, and Kyler Murray is a former QB1 of several years. So this is kind of a no-brainer. If you're struggling at QB, if you drafted, say, Danny Dimes or somebody else, and you're struggling, just go shore up the position with Kyler Murray right now.
Had to pop this up. Our friend Adrian Revito, all the way from Australia, fellow member of the Legit Football Podcast family, is playing you, Kevin, in fantasy. So he wants me to drop some nuggets that are going to throw you off the scent. Had to shout out to Adrian there.
I love that. Good for you, Adrian. You kind of spoiled it a little bit. I can read the comments too. So swing and a miss.
But it's not private just to me. Not to mention I just popped it out on the screen.
Good effort, Adrian. I like the gamesmanship.
Yeah. So here's why we have Kyler first here at Legit Football. You mentioned he's a QB1.
Yeah.
So he is 5th among NFL quarterbacks with 18.6 fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons, behind only your boy Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. He is a top 5 fantasy quarterback when healthy. Now, is he healthy? That's not the point. If you can get a top 5 quarterback on the waiver wire now, it doesn't matter if he doesn't play for a few seasons. That's a league winner, whether he's a bye week fill-in or your QB gets injured or he returns to form in this offense that has been frisky and suddenly starts producing and wins you a championship. No one else on this list has that kind of upside. So that's why, to me, Kyler Murray is a slam dunk number 1. But I'd love to hear who you have at number 1, Kevin. Why?
And I'm so super happy to talk about it. The year 2 and 3 are my 1 and 2. So I'm going to jump right in with Josh Downs. Oh my goodness.
I love Downs. It's hard to argue.
And I was actually really surprised when he wasn't your number 1. Brian, his performance against the Browns, I mean, take a bow, Mr. Downs. That was so unbelievable. Touchdown after.
I'm just going to go ahead and mention there are multiple of my favorite draft targets. There is
Yeah.
at least 3 on this list right now.
And one of mine. Hey, look at us. We really know our fantasy. It looks like, Brian. It's almost like we have a couple shows about it. But I love Josh Downs. I think his chemistry with Gardner Minshew has been really undisputed, and I see Gardner's on both of our lists. Spoiler alert. And that's part of the reason why I have Downs so high is because Gardner is the quarterback 1 now in Indy for the year. Really unfortunate about Anthony Richardson, but it is somebody. He is somebody I've brought up on this show several times, even when we thought it was a rental. I just love what he's capable of. We know he's one of the best backups in the NFL, and we finally are going to be able to see him helming the offense and funneling those targets to Downs. And I want it to be better for Pittman. You know, that's one little red flag I have, but I mean, it's very clearly great for Downs, I think.
And by the way, this upcoming matchup, if you're only watching this show for a 1-week replacement for whatever reason, Colts play the Saints, which means Marshawn Lattimore is going to be most likely shadowing and matched up on Michael Pittman, which means, and the Saints in particular have actually let up quite a few points. They've been pretty susceptible to slot wide receivers. This is lining up to be what looks like a Saints tough matchup, but a sneaky good matchup for a slot receiver like Josh Downs.
Yeah, definitely somebody to target in DFS. You know, if you're kind of like struggling in redraft or dynasty and you just need a spark, throwing Josh Downs in your lineup, hoping for that nitrous, hoping for that repeat of last week, who everybody, you know, fade your Colts. They're playing the number 1 defense, the Browns, yada, yada. Downs, I mean, it's early, but Brian, he might be matchup proof. I don't know yet. We got to see. But with Gardner throwing him the ball, he might be matchup proof.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to remind you and the viewers yet again that I put him in my first round mock when we did a mock draft for 30 minutes of football. That's how high I've been on Josh Downs. Tank Dell, who we'll get to. Those are my top 2 wide receivers outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba. Couple stats here. So Josh Downs, my number 2. So we'll just keep going on here. Last week, 5 passes for 125 yards and a tutty in week 7. Has seen at least 6 targets in each of his last 3 games and clearly has excellent chemistry with Gardner Minshew. Minshew looks to him early and often. And so Downs as number 1. If there's not a Kyler Murray available, I'm 100% in agreement that Downs should be number 1.
And I almost feel like at this point, Brian, we should just call this the Josh Downs show because we've been saying his name, I think, literally every week. I don't think there was a week off from having him on our list. So come on, people, listen to us. And then he wouldn't even be eligible for the show. Seriously.
Let's go ahead and keep rolling on to number 3. By the way, I'm seeing some fantasy Q&A questions in the chat. Quick opportunity to plug Josh asking questions in the chat. Join us Thursday, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Specifically, we will answer all your fantasy questions. I will be on it, the pale guy. I've missed the last 2 weeks. Kevin Phillip, Box, Buffalo Trail, and the Pro Football Demon. So, Josh, thank you for putting your questions in the chat, but this is just for waiver wires. Come back Thursday, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Ask your questions, get here early, and we'll make sure to get them added.
I think it'll be a particularly entertaining episode, being that it's going to also double as a Bills pregame show. So you guys will see me in my full
panic
Bills TNF. My full Bills panic. So you might not want to miss that.
It's must see TV for sure.
TV for sure.
Number 3, Dalton Kincaid, tight end for the Bills. Always been high on his talent, but finally set up to get the opportunity with Dawson Knox's injury, Kev.
Absolutely. And I would have had him on this list before the Dawson Knox wrist surgery announcement. He had a breakout game against New England when Knox was in the lineup, 8 for 75. Brian, his catch percentage is so ridiculous. It's unbelievable how good this guy is at getting open, presenting, flashing open for his quarterback, and then catching the ball when it's thrown to him. This is why they drafted him. Brandon Beane said some of the best hands he's ever seen coming out. And now, he's going to be arguably possibly Josh Allen's number 2 target rest of season. Maybe. I don't know.
You just said Josh Downs number 2 target.
Did I say Josh Downs?
He is.
That just goes to show you how much I love him. But Brian, I'm so excited about Dalton Kincaid, man. I'm thinking about going out and ordering a jersey. I really am. I think he's the real deal. I think he's a tight end 1 rest of season. I really do.
8 catches on 8 targets for 75 yards in that losing effort against the Patriots. But he was showing flashes with Knox in the lineup. The fact that Knox is out, Dalton Kincaid season, as they say. Absolutely.
To the moon.
So you already mentioned who's your number 3? Because you mentioned you had Dalton
It's
and
Kyler. Yeah, we
it's
have
Kyler.
the
Okay.
same top 3, just
So
a little flipped.
let's go on to number 4. My other wide receiver boy, Tank Dell. As I mentioned, the 2 wide receivers I liked the most outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba were Josh Downs and Tank Dell. And anybody who's in fantasy leagues with me can attest to that. Tank Dell, by the way, is on this list because after missing 1 week with a concussion and having a bye week, he slipped to 48% rostered.
Disgusting.
He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't have a bad game. He just got injured and then had a bye week. But guess what? That means he qualifies for the waiver wire show list. I mean, what needs to be said about him? 12 of 17 targets for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns between week 3 and 4 alone. And the only reason he fell behind is because of the bye week and the concussion. So this is a guy who, if you look, by the way, ESPN put out their wide receiver analytic metrics on a whole different side. I don't know if you caught that day on Twitter. Tank Dell was ranked the number 4 wide receiver according to their metrics in the NFL.
Wow.
They have different metrics with getting open, catch, and yards after catch, and they have different grades they attach to those. I think Dell was number 4, or maybe it was number 5, but he was in the top 5 in the NFL as a rookie.
Yeah, no, I wish I could say that I was surprised. His talent has been flashing all season. He's unbelievable. CJ Stroud is just a guy who you want to be funneling your wide receivers with targets. So I'm very, very excited about this Tank Dell. He's on my list. He's lower down on my list because I actually just found out pre-show that he was eligible. Yeah. He would have been.
He would have assumed he wasn't. I'm like, wait a second, 48%. All right.
I just threw him back on there because it's just a respect thing at this point. He's sort of like Josh Downs light. We've had him on this list probably 4 out of 7 weeks. Well, so
early on though, but Dell got rostered over 50% pretty quickly.
Was it first couple weeks?
Yeah, because he started showing out a lot earlier than Downs did.
Yeah.
Now the next guy on our list, who do you have it for? I guess.
Let me check my number 4. Actually, my number 4, Brian McFadden, is not on your list, and shame on you. My number 4 is Cam Akers. I actually foresee a very, very high likelihood that Alexander Mattison has seen the best of his season behind him. Cam Akers was poaching snaps, poaching touches, and in a competitive game script was the one on the field when the Vikings needed first downs, needed pass catching, needed anything really. I loved what I saw from Cam Akers last night. He looked good. I mean, I never thought he didn't look good. The health was always a concern, and the McVay stuff, but that's all gone now. And I think in a change of pace role, if he can usurp the bigger piece of the pie, if he gets a 60-40 snap share and touch share from the Vikings running back situation, I would be very happy to roster Cam Akers as a stash, maybe end of season play. We all remember what he did down the stretch last year in LA. He's very much, in my opinion, worth rostering at this point.
Yeah, my biggest issue with him is not his talent. It is the fact that he's had up and down seasons according to, from what we've read, effort, right? And the fact that the Vikings still really like Mattison. I'm with you on the Mattison nickname.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings still really like getting Mattison involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like an opportunity cost. I need to see a little more. He did have his best game as a Viking on Monday night against the Niners.
12 opportunities.
So would not be surprised at all if Akers makes this list next week. Speaking of running backs, number 5, this is a guy who's been on our list every single week. And with recent trade news, this guy could be number 1 for our waiver wire show in week 9. That is Tyjae Spears. He's totaled at least 58 scrimmage yards in each of his last 3 games. This is in a backup role, Kevin. And here's the kicker. And we've been saying this all year, but it was more for injury. But look, Kevin Byard was just shipped out of town from Tennessee to the Eagles. They've already said that Ryan Tannehill is injured, so we're getting a combination of Will Levis and Malik Willis. This is not a team that's going to compete. If they decide, the Titans, to trade Derrick Henry on the last year of his contract, Tyjae Spears could be an absolute league winner, and number 5 would be too low.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. He's another name. I feel like, I'm sorry, but like we've said him every single week. Like the fact that he's still not 50% rostered is blasphemous. I have him
currently sitting at 42% by the time we did this list.
Yeah, I have him where I can have him because and I've been saying for all the handcuffs that you need an injury to be league winners, Tyjae Spears has more standalone value than all of them. He absolutely, even with Derrick Henry, can still be an RB3 flex type play on any given week. If you're down bad, if you have a last minute injury, you could throw him in your lineup. Their scheming looks for him, Brian, every single game. He's getting reverses. He's getting screens. I think Tyjae Spears is such a valuable piece in fantasy football. And you're right. He could be the number one ad this week based on the trade rumors, which
trade deadline is Tuesday. So, I mean,
still,
we'll know.
Yeah.
We'll know by the time we do this show next week, Kevin, whether or not Tyjae Spears is RB1 or RB2 still in Tennessee.
And I'll be honest. We're all betting men. We're all into fantasy. I don't think Derrick Henry's going to get traded, but if he does, then Spears is and this is a term that's been much maligned, but he's a league winner. I don't care what people say. He's a league winner if Derrick Henry gets traded.
Yeah, 100% agree. Who do you have at number 5 there, Kev?
My number 5 pick is your number 6 pick, Darrell Henderson. I think it's pretty clear that he has earned the trust of the Rams coaching staff very quickly. Yes, he's formerly a Ram. It's probably one of those never really left kind of situations where, he comes in and immediately usurps his old role because Kyren Williams is out. Ronnie Rivers is out. Royce Freeman is Royce Freeman. No disrespect. But, that's probably what that is. In the Zach Evans hype train, man, you ever see those jokes where it's like RIP, like 1023 to 1023? Like that's the Zach Evans hype train.
They brought on 2 running backs to put ahead of him.
Yeah, very sad. I'll never forget, though.
After being down 2 running backs with Rivers and Kyren Williams. So basically, they thought 4 running backs were better than Zach Evans.
It was an entertaining couple days on Twitter. Yeah. But talk to me about Darrell Henderson. Why is he number 6 on the legit football list?
Since we have Royce Freeman at 7, both of these Rams running back, I'm going to combine the 2 of them.
Definitely.
I know we're skipping ahead a little bit, but I think it's relevant to talk about these 2 together. So first of all, the reason Henderson is ahead of Freeman is Henderson got 39 snaps on Sunday, where Freeman got 29. So a whole 10 more snaps for Henderson. So literally the Rams used him more. He did get in the end zone, so maybe a little bit more of that goal line work. It was a goal line touchdown that he did get. Not that efficient, only 3.4 yards per carry, but he did get 18 carries. So the usage is why we have Henderson. And you mentioned earlier, he's a former Ram. He has familiarity with that McVay offense, made it a little bit easier for them to plug and play. Royce Freeman, on the other hand, finished with 6.6 fantasy points. I mentioned 29 snaps, but he was a little more efficient. Only 12 carries, but got more yards. So 66 yards on fewer carries. So he was more efficient runner than Darrell Henderson. And it's possible that, coming up, they're playing the Dallas Cowboys this week, big matchup for the Rams, that we could see Freeman get more. But in the short term, the fact that Henderson got more touches and he got the goal line work, and at the end of the day, I think we can both agree Henderson is a more talented runner. That's why we have Henderson at 6 and Freeman at 7. But look, one of these guys, Kyron's on IR, Ronnie Rivers is on IR. One of these guys is going to be the running back for the next few weeks. So that's why we have them both on the list.
And it's perfectly fine. If you had to throw either of them in flex as a break glass in case of emergency option, you could do a lot worse. And I feel similarly about pre-Derrick Henry trade Tyjae Spears. So yeah, that's a really nice 3-pack there in the middle of the list of just some running backs. There's weeks, Brian, when I mentioned we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for running backs. So to be able to have 3 names, smack dab in the middle of our list and one at the end that we are pretty confident in, at least 3 out of the 4. And then DeMercado is DeMercado. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, Brian, I do have my 6 is your 10. So we'll put that one off for a second. Okay. I want to talk about a 2-pack that you don't have. And this is the last of my original contributions. I got Pierre Strong on the list. I think Pierre Strong is worth rostering. The snap percentage has shifted a little bit in that game. Everybody's talking about Kareem the Dream. Not me. He's not on our list. He's not on either of our lists. I think too much of a flash in the pan. Too much of the Browns kind of showed us what they thought of him when they didn't bring him back. I think Pierre Strong definitely has some value if he can steal that role from Kareem, and I think he can. And I think he started to at the end of that last game.
And we've seen Jerome Ford already going to be out for at least 1 to 2 weeks. So the opportunity is going to be there. And they did seem to start to lean towards Strong more of like the in between the tackles runner and Hunt as more of the pass catching back. And in the Browns offense, the in between the tackles runner actually has a lot of value.
Yeah. And honestly, Strong, the talent is there. He was really sharp in New England. He didn't really get much of a crack in my opinion.
Talent is strong.
Hey, there you go. Low hanging fruit, but I
This is
love
what
it.
we do on a Tuesday night. Waiver
Right,
wire.
literally. And then just one more name before we get just crush it with the rest of the legit picks. I have Demario Douglas, and our he's my 8, just
Mm,
like you have Patriots receiver at
let's
8.
yeah, let's go. Let's stick with the Pats
Yeah.
receivers in number 8.
And it's gross, but hey, you know what? Mac Jones looked like damn near Peyton Manning, not Peyton Manning out there against the Bills' banged up defense last week. Maybe Mac Jones turned a corner. I don't think so. I'm not predicting that or forecasting that. But Demario Douglas, if you watch that game, like I talked about with Spears, the coaches scheme him up looks. He's that kind of player. He's got that kind of talent. And, we talk a lot about with stashes, you want to go for upside. Kendrick Bourne actually does seem to have some upside too, so I don't hate that play either. But I think Douglas, just the juice that he has, he's the end around kind of player. I'm surprised they're not giving that role to their highly drafted Tyquan Thornton. I think that just goes to show you where he's at in his development, unfortunately. But I don't have a problem with putting in a little tiny bid for either Douglas or Bourne. So that's really what I got for you this week. Like I said, my 9 and 10. One of them we already talked about, and one of them we're about to talk about. So I just wanted to really quick just get in there with my last couple names, and then you can tell me what you think of those names, and then you can
Well,
fill out
we'll
your
stick
list.
with the Pats receivers, and the reason we put Bourne instead of Demario Douglas is Bourne is the wide receiver 1 in New England now.
Yeah.
Douglas might have that juicy talent. He's still
Right.
developing. They're still figuring out how to use him in fan or dynasty. I would probably really like Douglas over Bourne, but the waiver wire show is really more designed for redraft. So Kendrick Bourne, 16 of 18 targets for 152 yards and touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He is clearly the preferred target of Mac Jones. And if Jones has more games in him like he did against Buffalo, that could be in for really nice production for a guy like Bourne. Can't hate you for rostering a guy like Demario Douglas instead, but Bourne is the surer thing. He's been in the league longer, and he is the clear-cut wide receiver 1, and that's usually what I tend to go with at this point in the season. Going into week 8, if I can get a guy who is demanding more targets than anyone else in a particular offense, that's who I'm going to go for with waiver wires. We talked a little bit about Amari DeMercado at 9. I don't love any of the Cardinals running backs at this
Yeah.
point, but they like to run the ball with Jonathan Gannon in that offense. So he had a solid showing, 75 total scrimmage yards, 18 touches, 13 carries, 4 catches as well, which is also nice for the PPR leagues out there.
Yeah.
Undrafted rookie really seems to be coming up. He does have a pretty tough matchup against a Baltimore defense that is apparently one of the best in the NFL, and none of us really saw it coming.
But except for, they always are though.
They always are.
You
It
just
doesn't
can't
matter.
count.
We just got to ignore the roster
Yeah.
changes and be like,
Yeah.
no, it's Baltimore. They're going
Can't
to
count
figure it
them
out.
out. Yeah.
So where did you have Kyler before we get to number 10? Because you
He was my
mentioned that
3.
he was your 3. Okay.
He
All
was
right.
my
So
3. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
go to the second quarterback on this list. You mentioned you had him a little bit higher.
I have him at 6.
That is Mr. Gardner Minshew. 28.10 points against a very good Browns defense last week. But he also had 4 turnovers the week before. So we just know what you're getting into with Gardner Minshew. But he did have 334 total yards, 305 passing, 29 rushing, 4 total touchdowns. And he 8 turnovers in 2 weeks. You know what you're getting, right? You're going to have some ups, you're going to have some downs, but this is at least we know his ceiling is maybe higher than we gave it credit for, Kev.
Yeah, he's got a lot of juice, and I definitely would like to, victory lap a little bit. I've been, banging the Gardner drum on this show for a couple of weeks. I just love the player. I love the talent. I think he's, I always think back to the legit football intro, the old one where one of you says that Gardner's the best backup in the NFL, and I always laugh because
shout out to John Chapman from 49ers Rush podcast,
and that's who it is. Yep, and it's true. It's absolutely true. He's very, very good and as a backup. So, lower end starter, but he's a starter now. It is what it is. We got to look
starter
at it
for the rest of the year
in a vacuum. So yeah. I love what we saw against Cleveland. I just think that just sort of magic that he has, it's very Ryan Fitzpatrick-esque, and his persona is very similar.
Yeah.
I think Gardner definitely has the juice to be a rest of season top 15 or 16 QB, and he'll have those spike weeks. The Browns matchup was not good. Nobody started him, even if you picked him up and you were stashing him. So maybe that'll give you a little bit of confidence in those plus matchups to throw him out there.
He is Uncle Rico personified,
Literally.
and that's what makes him fun to watch. I got a couple bonus targets for you.
Let's go.
Chris Rodriguez Jr. starting to get a few touches. The rookie running back for Washington. Yes, I know they have Brian Robinson. I know they have Antonio Gibson, but just something to keep an eye on. If you have a deeper league with a lot of bench spots, you want to stash a guy like Chris Rodriguez. He's rostered in almost no leagues, so he's available. And Jalen Hyatt. This is more of a
I like
Tyrod
Hyatt. I like
Taylor
Hyatt. Yeah.
mention here, but he was showing. I mean, he had 2 big catches and at least one other that he was targeted deep. If the Giants use him more, now we don't know when Daniel Jones is coming back, but Taylor just got them a victory over a division rival, almost beat the Bills the week before. I personally would like to see Taylor stay in, and if that's the case, only 5% rostered right now. Jalen Hyatt, we know the talent is there. If you've got a roster spot, if you got a bench spot, you could do worse than stashing Jalen Hyatt.
Hell yeah. And for that matter, I mean, I'll throw Darius Slayton out there too. He's always good for a dart throw, deep play. You could do worse than those 2 guys in a pinch. I do really hope that Tyrod Taylor, we used to call him T-Mobile when he was the Bills quarterback. Love that nickname. I do hope he stays the quarterback. I don't think he will with all the money tied up in duds. Yeah, I mean, I love those picks. I love those bonus picks. You really, honestly, when it comes to stashes, it's almost like a lottery ticket. You gotta just call your shot. So call your shot, McFadden. I like it.
That does it for the Week 8 Waiver Wire show. Kevin, we're going to be here every Tuesday. I was going don't put the questions up. Move it for they got to wait.
I hear the wrap up segment. I hear the wrap up segment.
They got to wait for Thursday. I'm gonna tease that again.
Okay.
So every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Check in right here where Kevin and I will give you your top 10 waiver wire picks so that you can get your waiver wire claims and bids in before waivers hit, typically midnight Wednesday. And yes, I saw your question, Joe Holland. Josh had questions as well. If you guys have questions,
does
fantasy
Joe's question
questions,
count as a waiver question though? Asking about Minshew or Howell, does that not count? I feel like that's a waiver question.
All right, fine. I'll let you have this one, Kevin. So Joe
I gotta
Holland
show love.
will qualify this as a waiver wire. Do we move forward with Sam Howell at this point or Minshew mania? Yes, we can qualify that as because these are guys who are probably both under 50% rostered. So Kev, I'll let you start with this. You were eager to answer it.
Oh, sweet. Oh, geez, on the spot, man. That's your guy versus my guy. I can't pick. I love them both.
To me, I'm still going Sam Howell.
And I think I'll go with Gardner. Just upside,
okay.
right?
There you go. See, I think Sam Howell has the upside. I think Sam Howell has the lower floor. I think Minshew has a good. We saw 4 turnovers, but Minshew actually doesn't usually have games like he had last week.
He did
so I think
Philly,
but he also doesn't have games like he had this past week where he scored 28 points. So it's like Sam Howell has shown consistently that he can have a higher ceiling. So just based on historical precedent, I'm going with that over Minshew. I'm chasing the high ceiling.
I think I'll take Minshew just based on I just like what I see. I don't know. I think he's got juice.
He's Uncle Rico, man. He's fun to watch.
Rico, he's got the juice, right? And Howell just threw up all over himself against the Giants. That's a really bad sign.
Fair. All right, that wraps up the show. If you have any other questions, don't ask them now. Come to our show on Thursday, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. We are going to lead up right up until Thursday Night Football with Kevin's Bills. Any fantasy questions you have, start, sit, trade advice, player rankings, Minshew mania. We don't care if it's fantasy or NFL related. You can ask myself, Kevin, and the Pro Football Demon. Make sure to stay tuned for that and stay tuned every Tuesday while we give you our waiver wire picks. Kevin, thank you. It's always a pleasure with you. Good luck on all your waiver wire bids.